Hi, everyone. Welcome to this interview by Core Recruitment. Thank you very much for joining us today. Core Recruitment is an international recruitment company, and we specialize in mid to senior level recruitment across non-exec positions. We're running this interview series with some amazing industry leaders who are joining us to share their experience and their current take on the marketplace. All of the interviews that we're recording can be viewed on our website, which is www.corerecruitment.com, and there's lots of articles and videos there. So if you want to share them or watch them, then absolutely feel free to do that as well. Now, I'm very lucky to be joined by a very long-standing contact of ours at Core Recruitment, the one and only Rachel Jones. How are you, Rachel?
I'm very good. You're very kind. I'm good, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us today. Now, I have an ongoing joke with Rachel that kind of like, there's just an additional thing that gets added onto her job title every single time we have a conversation. Because there always seems to be something else that's kind of like, that she's covering at Sodexo, whether it's engagement or learning or talent or DEI. And now you're doing everything globally for talent and development. Is that correct?
That's correct. So yeah, I have lost the length of my title, which you used to take the mickey of me from. So yeah, lovely to meet you. Lovely to meet everybody that's listening or watching today. I am the Global Talent Director and Performance Director in Sodexo.
Excellent.
It's
Now,
short and sweet compared to other titles, Richard.
it's shorter and sweeter as well. Now, look, I do think with the food service kind of outsourcing facilities management sector, like, because I don't people think people always understand the size and scale of your business in terms of just how big the employee headcount is,
Yeah.
and how much you guys kind of operate. But you're one of the largest employers in the world, right?
Yeah. So depending on what view you take of it, we're either the 15th or the 17th largest employer in the world. Yeah, our global footprint is huge from a consumer point of view and from a people headcount. So again, depending on size in terms of where we are over the course of the year, just over 470,000 people globally
Wow.
have working as part of the family of Sodexo. So yeah, it's a big family.
It is a big family. And just to give a bit of a range of the diversity of services that you cover, can
Yeah.
you just give us a bit about that as well?
Yeah, so we will work with clients that are pure food clients. We will work with clients that are pure FM, IFM, and then we'll have clients that are a mix of the two in all sectors from corporate services to government, justice, defence, schools, universities, healthcare, energy resources, offshore resources. Sodexo Live, as well as another portfolio of Sodexo's business, which is the leisure hospitality sector for events and stadia, airline lounges, etc. And then we also have offshoots of our business where we have a business called Integra, which is around procurement and supply and efficiencies and sustainability. It's a vast, vast business that I myself wasn't even aware of before I joined Sodexo. And then when you Google it, you're like, did I really say I've never heard of that company? But yeah, it's a huge business that sits behind a lot of brands that people recognize. And then other times will sit as a front brand of Sodexo.
Absolutely. Now, across the whole kind of FM outsourcing sector, it's been changing a lot over the past kind of couple of years. As a big global business, what trends have you been seeing across the marketplace?
I think it doesn't matter where you sit globally, we have a geopolitical landscape that is challenging and has been challenging for some time now. And I'm not going to get into politics on this podcast or call. But I think in terms of, we've seen COVID hit and affect us deeply globally. I think we've seen challenges regarding sustainability, corporate social responsibility, cost of living crises. And also the demographic of ways of working. So, although COVID brought about flexibility in different ways of working, that's also brought challenges in terms of individuals. I think mental health, engagement, well-being of individuals, what people now seek from the workplace has impacted us both from our own personal employees and our business, but then equally with working with our clients who are our partners in terms of what they're wanting to produce and give to their employees as well.
Mm.
I think employee value proposition sits and holds different weight and currency in terms of the marketplace and the workplace. And I think the challenge is, every business has a cost challenge. So every business has the same dilemma of how do we do more or how do we do better for less? And that's a
Mm.
reality. And that then when partnership really, really comes into its own in terms of, you know, rich conversations, difficult conversations, challenging conversations, honest conversations, but collaborative working and really truly demonstrating partnership, which is why any client obviously is working with Sodexo because it's a partnership. So I think the challenge is we call it global and local. Sometimes it's identical, sometimes there's strands of difference, but we use global a lot because it's real everywhere.
Absolutely. Now, if there's an area that we've seen from an external perspective that Sodexo really seems to be owning at the moment and really focusing on, it's kind of like sciences, data, technology, and you've been massively, I mean, your client list in that area is enviable by any kind of company. How are these different to the traditional markets, and do they have a different skill set that you need to bring in?
Every client wants something that's quite different and bespoke. I think in terms of that market, you're right. We diversify a lot, and we've always done that. And I think that's what makes most businesses as of Sodexo relevant. Um, the innovation in the digital space is it's almost two pronged in the sense of it helps and drives our innovation and growth as well from a mindset point of view of who we're recruiting in the market to be an employee of Sodexo or to partner with our partners and clients. I think the skill set that's being looked for in that sense and that space is truly different to what we've recruited and had in the marketplace before. Everyone holds the same value. It's what the spotlight is on at the moment in terms of
Hmm,
the digital innovation. But equally, we always stay true to our core as well, which is, we're an FM and a food business. And we always will be. So it's having to have the right blend and mix of the skill sets in our business and what we're producing for our clients. But, tech, data, innovation, digital is absolutely one of the biggest investments that we've been investing in for the last 10 years. And if you're not investing in that and you're not looking in that space, you're going to be out of date very, very quickly because the
100%.
conversation is around data. It's not oh, show me the number. It's what does the number mean? How is the number built? What does that give me as an output? What is the difference for us as a business? Um, and the conversation's changed. Clients no longer want to hear all the great things we can do. They want to be shown all the great things that we can do, and data and innovation and working in a different way allows us and enables us to do that.
Absolutely. Now you've been triple, quadruple header, and I don't know what the quintupling headering, kind of like, the markets across the UK, Europe, the US. What globally are you kind of seeing at the moment in terms of the differences between those markets in terms of growth?
I think just pace is different in different spaces, So our NORAM business at the moment is really aggressive from a global point of view in terms of global clients where head office is based or situated in the US. And I think in terms of continental Europe, there are certain countries that we're present in Europe where there's lots of opportunities from an M&A point of view, and we're really looking and analysing at those markets at the moment. I think from the UK point of view, it's a hard market. It's a really difficult, complex market. But actually, there's a lot that's the positive side of that and the flip side of that in terms of, we see great levels of maturity in the market and understanding and depth of candidates and businesses in the market. I think the biggest points of difference are the obvious ones, to be honest, Christian, in terms of, you've got different acts of legislation, different ways of working, procuring, etc. And cultural difference is huge. It's really being tuned into the fact that, culturally means that you need to do business differently. And, the quicker that you tune into that and that you are respectful and humble of those ways of working, really allows good business to happen and good relationships to form. But I
Yeah,
go back to my previous answer. The challenge is real and live everywhere across the globe.
absolutely. Now, businesses generally, with this being more cost conscious, I mean, one of like Sodexo's major pillars kind of previously and currently is about sustainability, it's about ESG, it's about well-being, that kind of side of things. How have you been balancing that cost conscious approach with those kind of like, with those key values?
I think if it's real and it's integrated in the business and it's a true value and a true DNA, it's not questioned, it's not asked. There's always a cost, but actually, when we talk about our employee headcount and the size and the responsibility that we have to those individuals, well-being, mental health matters hugely. It's not just a
Yeah.
statement that's made. It's lived, it's breathed, it's felt across the whole entire business. That's reflected in our engagement survey. And for me, it's about fundamentally doing what is right first. So, we will always be a low margin business. It's known. We know that. And we have to work hard and we have to compete for business with some great competitors that we are always competing with. And we understand and respect them as well because we're all in the same space. But I think in terms of doing the right thing for planet and places and people is a fundamental to Sodexo. So
Mm.
yes, there are probably things that we do that are very costly, but actually, what is the bigger and the greater cost of us not doing them? And that's a question and a conversation I will always have with business leaders. When someone says, "Why do we need to do this?" or "Why would we do this?" I will just pose the question, "Why wouldn't we?"
Mm.
So yeah, nobody has an endless checkbook. So you've got to be commercial, you've got to be respectful, you've got to sometimes repurpose cost and budget. But it's about fundamentally staying true to who you are and what we are. And I know the values and the DNA are strong in Sodexo.
Absolutely. Now, moving on to a little bit about leadership style, and you've got an incredible network. I know this because I tap you up all the time when I'm looking for kind of like, really great people. But kind of like in terms of the leaders that you've worked with previously, who's really inspired you and driven you on, and what did you kind of get from them?
Yeah, do you know what? I think if I named anyone in particular, then everybody else would be mortified. So I'm going to try and keep my network strong. Um, do you know what? I feel super privileged to work with some of the people that I have and that I still work with, Christian. Um, I'm opinionated, I'm vocal, I'm challenging. As you know, and you're smiling, I have the energy, I bring the energy. I'm very purpose led. I'm very honest and authentic in my approach. And so I love working with people that hold those characters and traits. And I think for me, having leaders that you can be amongst and walk amongst and talk amongst, where you feel safe psychologically to be yourself and to challenge with humility, but have the right conversation and hold people to account. And, you know, a phrase that I'll use is the monster in the mirror is sometimes us or you, or, and being able to have that conversation. Um, and also, I've worked with leaders who, when I've had personal issues, I lost my sister and I'm comfortable saying and sharing that, the human that stood in front of them to make sure I was okay and I was all right is something that will never be forgotten. So, there's people that, you spend more of your living life at work than we do doing anything else. And I say this to so many people, like draw a timeline, school and then retirement, and the big chunk in the middle is work. So find something you love, do something that you
Mm.
love, and be with people that you really get energized from. So I feel super privileged to work with some of the leaders that I've worked with. And I also feel really privileged to work with some people that maybe I wouldn't choose to work with again. Because, Pierre Bellon, had many, many, many sayings and quotes and ways of working. And, he spoke about failure is great if you learn from failure and fail fast. And so I love the fact that, not every leader is a great leader. And I'm sure at times I'm not, and I wasn't. So yeah, leaders come and look in many forms.
Love that. Now, diversity and inclusion is a big building block for us here at Core. We know it's a big building block for you guys at Sodexo as well. And I'm always slightly taken aback by how much you guys do in this space, but also the work that you do globally in markets where maybe it's not as always kind of like accepted as it is within other markets, but you're always pushing the envelope somewhere, you know what I mean? Which I absolutely love. Can you give us a little bit about your approach behind across the business and any initiatives that you're driving at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sodexo is its authentic self, no matter where it's at. As you say, we will always be respectful of cultures. We will always be respectful of different people. But I think, when you make a stance and you say who you are, and you also make a stance that says who you're not, and that bit's really important, who you're not. Um, Sodexo is really comfortable then sticking really close to that. So diversity, equity, inclusion is a huge factor, a massive factor of who we are. And we know it's a unique point of difference. Now, it's not done for us to say, oh, it's a unique point of difference. It's a very authentic way of being. I'm delighted, obviously, that I'm supporting you guys at the International Women's Day event that we're hosting. I'm sponsoring a lady at the moment who is part of our Stop Hunger campaign, as an example. She's out in Nigeria, and she's one of three people that we're sponsoring who's gone through a massive process where we're giving her support from a leadership point of view on how to grow her business. But we're also really focusing on women in this space from a Stop Hunger point of view. Equity is huge. Equity is absolutely huge in terms of, we know the size and the scale of our business. So what are we putting back in local communities with our local people that don't work at Sodexo, but we can positively impact? So I think the work that we do is twofold. It's always, what do we do with our own employees? What do we then do with our communities that we serve in one way or another, and the impact that we can have? I was at an event last week, again, like Empower Her, where we'd got a group where, again, I was very blessed to be a sponsor of, in terms of taking female leaders from our business and putting them on a program where they worked with local charities to enhance and support their businesses, and gave them confidence, knowing that they were strong leaders and that they could positively impact small businesses that are charities. So there's a lot of work, but for us as a business, there is so much that can be done. And so we stand by, what impact can we make? And someone asked me a question a couple of weeks ago on, like, but there's so much to do and there's so much to change. Like, you'll never be able to make a massive impact. And I just said, well, but if we impact one person's life, and small steps are still steps,
Mm.
and change happens slowly, is sustainable change. So yeah, it's something that's huge, huge for Sodexo.
Absolutely. Now, we've had one motivational, inspirational quote from you so far. Well, maybe two.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
definitely. But you love a good post on LinkedIn, kind of like putting up kind of like something about this. And like I always see them kind of like come up, and also like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. Are there any that you live by every day? Because we all have those moments where you finish a call and you're like, or like, you look at your email account and you go like, it's crazy, all of that kind of stuff. Mostly probably for me. But like, but which kind of like, which quotes do you kind of like, really use kind of like day to day, especially when you're managing such a large global team?
Yeah, I think that there's probably a couple. I think an obvious one for me is, stay true to yourself. It's easy to get lost in a big global world, or a big complex organization. And I think staying true to yourself, staying true to your core, I'm even using your core here, Christian, um, really matters. I think the other one is that I say frequently: whatever you're fearful of or whatever scares you, do more of. I say that to my team all the time. Like, what makes you uncomfortable, do it. Do it. Make a real conscious effort to do it, because all of a sudden then your freedom to go and do what you want to do is just greater. And I think another one will be, sometimes your worst day is someone's dreamed of best day.
Hmm.
And I really mean that. And sometimes it's, when you go to, like events that I was speaking to lately, and, there is the whole, oh my goodness, like, it's a 3 hour drive, or it's a long day, or whatever it is. Or you're traveling, or, you're on a flight for 10 hours, and that's someone's dream. That is someone's dream or wish to do that type of experience or role, or have that impact. So, of course it comes with, weight and worry doing a senior role. But It absolutely should, because we have such responsibility. So yeah, I think there's probably a load I could talk about. I'm always positive, as you know. The cup is always overflowing with fullness, even when it's empty. Yeah, choose your attitude. Do you know what I mean? Bring your own energy. You can choose, you can dictate your life, your story. Be the author.
Love that. I'm gonna snapshot that and do like 5 minutes of like Rachel every morning to like, cheer me up, Rachel. I love that. Now, looking back in terms of your career, I normally find this with kind of like female leaders, or sometimes find with female leaders, that there's a role or there's a position that kind of changes their trajectory in terms of what they're going to go on and what they're going to do. And it's normally when they're given an opportunity or something like that kind of comes up. Is there a point in your career that kind of like put you on the path to where you are today, or a situation that kind of did that for you?
I think there's probably a couple, if I'm being honest. I remember when I started off and I was only 16 and I was at Tesco. And I remember seeing this lady who was the customer service manager, and she was just vibrant and energetic and so personable. And I remember sitting on the till looking at her thinking, she's just amazing. Like, she's so confident, like she owns it. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And so that was kind of like then the start of my Tesco career, then in terms of customer services. Then I was a manager, then I was a customer service manager and a store manager. And I always wanted to emulate like her confidence and energy. And she was a massive part for me when I was in retail in Tesco. I also think then as well, I went to a competitor of yours, so we'll leave it at that. And then I went and worked obviously in recruitment. And it was the whole sense of me stating, oh, I wouldn't be very good at sales. I've never sold in my life. I'm not a seller. And someone just saying to me, the best sellers are someone who delivers a phenomenal service. And I'm service driven, I'm all about impact and service and great experience. And so that was a point for me as well that really challenged me to think broader than, I didn't need to have narrow career lines of, oh, I've only done retail, so I can now only stay in retail for the rest of my
Mm.
life. So there was that. And then I also think when I became a mother, it just fundamentally allowed me to feel really comfortable in terms of saying, no, I can't do that. Yes, I am going to do that because this is not going to stop me or slow me or prevent me. And I think what came with that and what came with age as well was an ability to be really, truly at my most comfortable with who I am and what I am.
I love that answer. That's really good. I love that. In terms of the motherhood kind of side of things, like on that kind of guys, a lot of people have spoken about like the skills that they learn there that they've taken into the workplace. Can you just give us a little bit on that as well?
Yeah, I have two children, Jessica and Alfie. If you know me, they're the centre of my absolute universe. I know we always talk about the kids before we have any work conversation, Christian. Um, I think there's so much that you learn from being a parent that I don't want to be disrespectful to people that don't have children. I really want to state that genuinely. But I think me as a mother is a much better version in the workplace as well as even outside of work. So I think diary discipline, the ability to then say no with no guilt
Yeah.
because it's parents' evening, it's sports day, it's a birthday, it's Christmas. I'm addicted to work. I love work. For me, like there's no start and stop with work because I enjoy it. It's part of me. But if it's a sports day or parents' evening, it's a hard stop. I'm a very present parent at that time. I also think as well, they give you context. Like you can feel really important or you can feel really stressed out. And then you come home and my son or my daughter might say, look at this painting I've done today. Isn't this great? And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that's amazing. And then you kind of like forget the fact that you've just walked in and you're a director of this big global business because you're not to them. And I love that. Like I love it. Or, I'll be pretending I'm a dog and I'm dressed up with some dog ears. And I'm like, oh my God, if people at work could see me now. And I think the other thing is like, I love how they will check me. Like, I will say something and they're like, Mum, you're not allowed to say that. And I'm like, aren't I? Really? And I'm thinking, I'm HR. I think I'm quite good with diversity. And so I just love the fact that, I learn from them, they learn from me. I've gone through my daughter doing GCSEs, which I felt like I was doing the exams as well, Christian, as well as doing a full-time job. So I wouldn't recommend that. Um, I just think it gives you just a different richness of everything. It's hard, I'm not going to lie, it's difficult juggling. You sometimes feel the guilt for work or you feel the guilt for the kids, but my God, it's a gift that I would never give back, and I'm incredibly grateful for.
Excellent. Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with
Oh,
us today. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of an insight into life in the university and everything else. Thank you so much also for taking part in International Women's Day with us this year as well. I think it's going to be a phenomenal event, and you're going to be hosting the most amazing panel that I think we've ever put together. Oh, no, a really amazing panel, but it's going to be like,
amazing, amazing, amazing.
amazing, amazing panel. Amazing, amazing, amazing panel. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks.